Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, we have started working on our other two channels, Lost Relation Chronicles and Fright Chronicles. Please show your love by subscribing to the channels and help us grow. The links are in the descriptions box. Now let's start with today's story. Well, it happened. I said it never could, but screw me, was I ever wrong. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, rubbing my eyes, trying not to disturb the woman next to me. Hell, I didn't even know her name. Shit, for that matter. I didn't know where I was or how I got here. All I could remember was me and my buddies, Kenny and Dwight, going out last night for a few beers and a good time. I can't remember how many bars we hit, but the last one was the best, the Pink Lady and Company. I can't even remember leaving the place, so I must have crashed and somehow ended up in this bed with a beautiful redhead sleeping next to me. And I knew I was in big trouble, big trouble. You see, I'm a married man, at least for now. Married to a gorgeous brunette who is an expert marksman with the pistol and has a quick temper. You see, she's a cop, a homicide. Me? Hell, I'm just a lowly flatfoot blue suit driving a black and white hack. I'm Robert McNamara, Bobby to my friends, and currently work the city's west side as a patrol sergeant. Sherry and I have been married going on 12 years so far, and we've had our ups and downs. Let's face it, to be an effective cop, you've got to have a pretty strong personality with a matching ego. And we both did. The two of us, well, we've had some nasty, down-in-the-gutter fights and always thought we were right about the argument that started our free-for-alls. Eventually, after several days of avoiding the other, we would forget the past and make up, and boy, did we make up. We've been too busy in our careers to worry about starting a family, though I believe Sherry's concerned over it. Maybe her biological clock has started banging away. She hasn't said anything yet. Anyway, I digress. Now, I find myself naked in an unknown room, in a strange bed with an anonymous woman. Maybe my closest friend Dwight can help me. Dwight's a longtime friend from high school and college. We played football in college, but we never finished school. Together, we waltzed into the nearest Marine recruitment office and signed up. We spent nearly 2 tours in Afghanistan until Dwight's injury from a roadside bomb. He was doing convoy duty when the device went off, sending shrapnel up through the chassis into his thigh, just above the knee. I was on base when I heard the news and rushed to the hospital. When I got there, they were busy trying to save the leg. It was the 3rd time in my life I cried. The first when I was born and 2nd time at my father's funeral. Dwight was like a brother to me. Later that evening, the doc told me they were able to save the leg, but he would suffer a noticeable limp for the rest of his life. They sent him stateside and later discharged from the Corps. While stateside, he managed to get into investment brokerage and trading, making some decent coin. Finishing my 2nd tour, I was sent stateside, assigned to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, instructing new recruits. A year later, I received my walking papers and returned home, temporarily settling in with my mother, helping her around the house and with the finances. After a few weeks home, Dwight and Kenny, an old high school buddy to both of us, and I got together for a few beers down at the local watering hole. As we sat there beating our exploits and other lies, I spied a uniformed police officer enter the establishment and speak with the bartender. A 2nd officer stood by the entrance. The bartender nodded, pointing toward the pool tables in the back room, and the officer nodded, looked at his partner, and gestured toward the back. "Looks like some excitement's gonna come our way," said Dwight. "Maybe," I replied, never taking my eyes off the local gendarmes. "Shit, don't like cops," muttered Kenny. "They busted me a month back for possession." Dwight laughed, but I replied, "No shit, Sherlock. I would have busted you too, dumb shit. What are you doing with that crap anyway? High school's long over." I was never one to hide my feelings. Okay, I screwed up. Geez, you'd think you've never screwed up before," cried Kenny. Suddenly, a loud crash and screaming came from the back. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already halfway there when some lowlife came barreling out of the back directly toward me. I saw him stare at me as he came, but he didn't expect the clothesline and struck head-on into my extended arm. His feet swung out from under him as he fell like a stone, smacking the back of his head on the hardwood floor. When I looked down, he was out for the count. "Dwight, stay with this shithead," I yelled and ran into the back room. 2 other biker-type a-holes were in a clinch with the 2 cops, one of them trying to get the 2nd officer's gun. I rushed over and grabbed the a-hole's long, greasy hair and yanked him back. He growled and turned toward me. "You just made a big mistake. Shit for brains," he snarled and came at me. My hands had already curled around a cue stick, and as he ran at me, his face making contact with the heavier end, I heard a crack as his nose shattered, and he screamed as he rushed me. His hands grabbed my throat, pushing me back. However, the stick was still in my hands. I watched as his eyes bugged out and his mouth formed a perfect O. He fell to his knees, clutching his balls before vomiting on my boots. "You piece of shit!" I yelled as I wiped the puke off my boots onto his filthy leather vest. Then I kicked him as hard as I could in the face, sending him backward, slamming his head against the pool table. The second cop was able to assist in gaining control of the other biker, and soon they had him cuffed. They grabbed the shithead that was groaning and holding his nuts as he lay next to the pool table. Soon, the bar was full of cops, all of them ready for beer. Seems some of them were disappointed when they found all the participants out or in custody. I returned to our table to find both Dwight and Kenny staring at me with their mouths open. "Jesus Christ, Bobby. What the hell was all that about? You trying to get yourself killed?" Kenny was a little wound up as he squawked. "Dunno, man," I replied, looking somewhat sheepish. I took a long swig of my beer when Dwight started laughing. "Shit, just can't stop being the top dog, can ya?" He chuckled. "Gotta mix it up." I smiled and said, "Hey, you can take the man out of the core, but you can't take the core out of the man." "Semper Fi," we said together, laughing, and smacked our mugs together. "Excuse me, I hate to interrupt this special moment between you two, but would you step outside for a moment?" We looked up and saw a gorgeous brunette in a blue suit with a badge standing there, her hand on her sidearm. My mouth fell open as I stared into those incredibly soft light brown eyes. Glancing at her name tag, I read S. Whitley. Looking at her uniform, which she filled perfectly, I noticed she was a slick sleeve. Standing, I said was Bob McNamara and would be pleased to make her acquaintance. She smiled and said she was ordered to come inside and find me. I smiled and said in my best Wayne impression, "Well, little missy, you found me." She rolled her eyes and turned as I followed her outside, temporarily blinded by all the flashing red and blue lights. 3 officers approached me, one a 3-striper. "Mr. the sergeant asked. "Bob, Robert McNamara, how can I help you?" I stared at the sergeant as he smiled and replied, "I believe you already have. I just wanted to thank you for your assistance in the bar." From what Officer Reed said, the a-ho. The culprit was almost successful in getting Reed's gun until you interceded. There's not many that would do that. Listen, can you give Officer Whitley your name, address, and a phone number where we can reach you? I'd like to speak with you again, if you don't mind. No, not at all, Sergeant. Sorry about that, Weston, Sergeant Weston. Sure, Sergeant Weston. Be glad to help. I ended up shaking hands with the sergeant and the other 2 officers I had helped earlier. They were very gracious, the older one asking, "Core?" I smiled and nodded. He said, "Figured, thanks again." Shook my hand one more time and turned away. I swung around to face the beautiful Officer Whitley. Staring into my eyes, she said, "Okay, now I have your name. How about your address and phone number?" "Sure, as soon as you give me your phone number," I replied. A huge grin plastered across my face. "Sorry, doesn't work that way, Slick," she chuckled. "This is for the Sarge. I can always tell him you refused." I sighed and said, "Okay, 2134W. Euclid, 645-7856. Now, see, that wasn't so hard, was it? Thank you." With that, she turned and walked away, that scrumptious body swaying seductively below her gun belt. Watching her leave, a lump formed in my throat and nearly choked when she glanced back and smiled. When I returned to the bar, Dwight was laughing and Kenny, smacking his forehead, appeared upset. "You got eyes for a cop," he whined. "Shit, she's gorgeous, Bobby. Get her number?" Shaking my head, I told them I tried, but it wasn't to be displaying my best sad puppy eyes. They both started laughing, Kenny shaking his head muttering, "It ain't right. It just ain't right." To shorten this story, I joined the police force, spent the next 5 years in patrol, next moving into narcotics, became a sniper on the SWAT team, and, a year later, promoted to sergeant. During this time, I suffered many unsuccessful attempts to get Sherry to go on a date with me. Oh, and by the way, don't think I joined the force and did all that just to impress Officer S. Whitley. The first time I mixed it up in that bar, I decided then and there I wanted to become a cop. Finally, Officer Whitley relented. Much to her better judgment, Shari went out with me and had a surprisingly good time. After that, we began dating on a regular basis, but it was 3 months before I was able to woo her into my bed. By this time, I had fallen so deeply in love with Sherry, I was going crazy knowing she was dating other guys. Finally, I had enough. One evening, while working graveyard, I called her. "Hello? Bobby, that you? It's 3 in the morning, you bonehead. Sherry, I love you more than you could ever know. I need to see you right now." Bobby, you're scaring me. Why can't this wait until? Sherry, this can't wait. Please, I need to see you. Exasperated, she said, Okay. Give me a couple of minutes to wake up and get dressed. Where are you? Parked in front of your complex. Shit, Bobby. Kinda out of your jurisdiction, don't you think? Don't care. I need to see you now. 5 minutes later, she was standing and scolding me for being out of the city. For God's sake, Sergeant Robert E. McNamara, what has gotten into to you? You know the watch commander has a GPS tracking monitor. He's gonna see you're out of the city and way out of your division. Sherry, we've been going together for over 6 months now. I know you've been going out with other guys and it's killing me. I took her hands, gazing into her face now scrunched with concern. I reached into my pocket and removed a small black box. I heard her gasp and whisper, No, Sherry, I love you more than anything or anyone. I want you to grow old with me, to be my wife. Sherry, will you marry me? I opened the box and thought, There, I said it. No taking it back now. For what seemed an eternity, she stared at the little black box, at the white gold band with a 1-carat marquee cut diamond ring lying on top of pale blue satin material. As I stared at her, tears began to form at the corners of her beautiful eyes. She looked up into mine and sniffled. I reached over and gently wiping away the tears, and before I could remove my hand, she took it and held it to her cheek. Yes, she said so quietly I wasn't sure she had said it. What? I asked, afraid of the answer. Yes, I'll marry you, she answered, rushing into my arms. I felt her crying, her tears soaking my uniform. I removed the ring and, as she held out her left hand, slipped it over her finger. Perfect fit. My pack set squelched and I answered the call. Unit Sam 423? Sam 423. I answered. Well? I recognized Lieutenant Blakely's voice. She said yes. Congratulations. Now get back in the city. Pronto? 10-4 and thanks, Lieutenant, I replied. Looking at Sherry, she smiled and kissed me deeply for several seconds before she repeated the lieutenant's order. Now get back in the city. Pronto, Sergeant McNamara. I hugged her fiercely and kissed her before I let go. She wiped the tears from her face as she held my hand and kissed it. She brought her ring to her lips and kissed the stone, watching as I got in my patrol car. Just as I was about to pull away, she screamed, Wait! Sherry ran to the side window, reached in and kissed me one more time. Okay, now go. With that, I left and returned to the station and, moment I entered the building, was paged to proceed to the briefing room. As I entered, my entire squad, the East Division squad and the lieutenant were all standing there clapping and cheering. Nearly in tears, I stood there as everyone slapped me on the back saying, Way to go. Finally, I told my squad, Shit, isn't anyone on the streets now? Hit the bricks, you loafers. Everyone laughed as they left the briefing room. When Sherry and I married, Dwight was my best man and Kenny one of my entourage. The wedding was great, but the preceding bachelor party was a blast. Dwight and the guys from my squad put together one hell of celebration, complete with a live band and strippers, though I saw no evidence of it. Knowing Dwight, I also expected some of those strippers may have been high-priced hookers. That was the last thing I needed before my wedding day, but Dwight made sure I went through the usual soon-to-be ex-single guy hazing. He had me sit in a chair in the middle of a circle made of all the guys as each stripper did her thing. I think Dwight offered a bonus to any girl that could make me excited. Didn't happen. The reception went off without a hitch, Dwight presenting the toast as a graveside eulogy. One thing I did notice, Dwight never took his eyes off Sherry. I knew he was attracted to her and, on several occasions, joked about keeping his hands to himself, but I trusted him implicitly. He would never do anything to hurt me or Sherry. I looked over at the redhead and gently tapped her on the shoulder. While what? Excuse me, but who are you? She slowly turned over and looked at me, confusion then alarm in those blue eyes. I think I should be asking you that question, don't you think? Okay, now I was baffled as all hell. Let's start over, okay? My name is Bob. Bobby McNamara, what's yours? She didn't look well and, with some irritation, replied, Suzanne O'Connor. Now, can you please tell me how I ended up in your bed? Suzanne, you may not believe this, but this is not my bed. I don't know where the hell I am or how I got here. Plus, I certainly don't remember you, and I definitely would not forget someone so gorgeous. She gave a kind of half smile before saying, Bobby, I have no idea what happened last night. I remember being out with my girlfriends for the evening. The last thing I remember was meeting this cute guy at the Pink Lady. We danced and had a few drinks. The next thing I know, you're waking me up. She sat up holding the bed sheet to her neck. I already knew we were both nude. Did we? She hesitantly asked. I don't know. I don't remember doing anything, but I really don't know, I said. Look, I would never have gone looking for this. I'm married to a wonderful woman and wouldn't do anything to jeopardize my marriage. At least, I hope I didn't. Don't get me wrong, you're a beautiful girl, and if I wasn't happily married, hell, I'd fight any guy that was between me and you just to meet you. But I love my wife. The redhead smiled and looked around. Wrapping the bed sheet around her lithe frame, she rose and made for the bathroom. After several minutes, she came out wearing a pair of trendy faded denims, a white halter top, and a short denim jacket. She was holding a pair of red shit-kicker cowboy boots in her right hand. Looking relieved, she said, I found my clothes in the bathroom. And no, we didn't. Stupidly, I just stared at her because she repeated, we didn't do it. Oh, right, thank God. I'm sorry, that didn't come out right. I'm just glad I didn't cheat on my wife. Suzanne giggled and approached me. I was under the blanket when she leaned down and kissed me on the cheek. Your wife is a very lucky woman. If you weren't married, I could so easily go for you. Now it was my turn to blush and smile. Thank you. I started thinking I'd better get her number just in case I might need a good defense. Suzanne, please don't misunderstand this, but would you give me a number I can reach you at? She hesitated before reaching into her purse and pulling out a card, handing it to me. It was a business card of a well-known law firm, O'Connor, Doyle, and Witherspoon. I looked up, O'Connor? She gave a slight shrug and said, my father. I just finished my law review, and he's willing to take me on. She laughed when I said I might later need her professional services. If your wife loves you as much as you love her, you won't need it. Suzanne smiled and left the room. I laid there trying to think back to last night. What the hell happened? I thought. Then I thought, shit, I'd better get home. I found my clothes on the chair next to the bed and quickly dressed. I recognized the lobby as the old Baxter Motel and walked to the registration desk. A scroungy-looking clerk wearing a cheap suit asked what I needed. Hey, when did I check in last night? Room 157. I stared as he checked the computer and said, about 2 in the morning, Mr. Copperfield. You're already paid for the night, so everything is square. Mr. Copperfield? How was the room paid for? I questioned. Cash up front, says here. The night clerk checked you in. There's a notation saying you were with your wife. Oh, this is getting better by the minute. Do you have any other info, such as driver's license, vehicle description and license, anything else? No. Since the clerk accepted cash up front, he didn't bother to ask for anything else. Says here, you and your missus paid cash and went directly to the room. When does the night clerk come on duty? I was getting worried. Sorry, sir, but he doesn't come back to work until the next week, Friday, I think. Ask for Jimmy Freeman. I slipped the clerk a 20 and walked outside looking for my car. I wasn't sure it would be, but there it was. Someone went to a lot of trouble to set this up. By the time I got home, Sherry was already at work. I jumped in the shower, failing to see a few items missing from the vanity. After I toweled off, I realized there was a problem. Sherry's personal items were gone. Running into the bedroom, I discovered some of her clothes were absent and, checking the drawers, most of her undergarments were absent. Goddamn it all to hell, I thought. Someone has done a good job of setting me up. I tried calling her cell, but she was obviously screening her calls. When I called the station and asked for her, the secretary informed me Sherry checked out and was in the field for the day. Son of a witch, I growled. How the hell am I going to get that hot-headed wife of mine to listen? I decided to call Dwight and find out what the hell happened last night. Dwight, where are you? My apartment, bud. How you feeling? There was a smirk in his voice. Not too good. What the shit happened last night? The last I can remember is having a few drinks at the Pink Lady with you two goofs. Not pretty, Bob. You stepped in it this time. Man, you were smoking with the ladies that night. Picked up on a little redhead and disappeared. After you vanished, I took off, but Kenny wanted to stay. Had some little bimbo he was working. Seems Sherry came looking for you. How she found out we were at the Pink Lady, I got no idea, but Kenny tried telling her you stepped out for a breather. Somehow, she found out about you leaving with the redhead. Hope she was worth it, bud, cause Sherry went on the warpath last night. Evidently, someone tipped her off about the Baxter. She found you in bed with that little number, came back to the club, and told Kenny what she found and that you were history. Kenny told me about it this morning. What the hell was wrong with you, man? Honest to God, Dwight, I have no idea what happened. All I remember is us having that third beer. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in some cheap motel room with some unknown woman next to me. I was hoping you or Kenny could clue me in as to what went down. Someone went to great lengths to set me up, Dwight started laughing on the phone and said, "Come on, Bobby, listen to yourself? Set you up? Not what Kenny and I saw. That little redhead was all over you, and you were eating it up. Gotta tell you, man, the conspiracy theory's not gonna go far. No way will Sherry ever buy it. You screwed up big time, and she's too good for that kind of shit." I knew he was right. Sherry was too smart to believe something as crazy as my story. Somehow, I was going to have to find out who set me up, but I still needed to talk to her, to at least tell her what happened. "Have you heard from Sherry?" "Yeah, she dropped by this morning. Wanted to know what I knew about last night." "Hey bro, with the evidence she already had, I had to tell her. She's one pissed off woman and she's packing heat. She said she moved out for a spell, at least until she figures out what she's gonna do to rectify your cheating ways. If I were you, I'd stay low until she cools off." Dwight sounded much too pleased with himself over all of this. If I didn't trust him so much, I might think he was happy about Sherry bailing on me. "Where's Kenny?" I asked. "Dunno, Bobby said he was gonna head south for some job prospects. He's gonna call when he gets down there." "Hell," I said. "I need to find out what happened. You know that redhead is a lawyer? Her father runs the law firm of O'Connor, Doyle, and Witherspoon. And she doesn't have a clue how she ended up in bed with me. Matter of fact, she was pretty sure we didn't do the nasty. We didn't have sex. You gotta be kidding me. A gorgeous redhead like that, and you didn't screw her." "Sorry, Bobby, that ain't gonna fly." For some reason, I detected a slight note of irritation in Dwight's voice. "Dwight, you better tell me now. You know what's going on here? What really happened?" "Bobby, like I told ya, after we got to the Pink Lady, you picked up on that little redhead and spent the rest of the night smoozing up to her. You were feeling no pain when I left, and only Kenny knows what happened afterwards." "Sorry, can't help you, bud." "Okay, call me if you hear from Sherry or Kenny." "Sure thing, Bobby, sure thing." From the sound of his voice, I had the distinct impression calling me would be the last thing he'd do. Something just wasn't right. I drove around the city looking for Sherry. She still hadn't returned to the station, and Stan, her partner, said she left without him. Something she rarely does. I knew the car she drove, a black Ford Crown Vic, but, so far, couldn't find it. Near the end of the day, I finally gave up and went home. As I drove up, I saw the Ford in the driveway. Going in the house, I heard noises coming from the bedroom and rushed in, finding Sherry packing 2 suitcases. Hearing me enter, she turned and glared, her eyes red from crying. "Get the hell away from me, you son of a witch. I don't want to see you're sorry." "Sherry, please. This is all a big misunderstanding. I was set up." Her eyes widened and she began laughing. "Dwight told me you were going to say that. You think I'm a moron? Do you, Bobby?" She resumed, throwing her clothes into the case. "You piece of shit. Dwight told me how you moved on that girl and took off with her. I found your car in the parking lot of the closest sleazebag motel, the Baxter. The night clerk said a couple had checked in an hour earlier. When I showed him a photo of you, he confirmed that Mr. Copperfield." "Mr. Copperfield? Give me a break." He confirmed the photo was Mr. Copperfield. It wasn't hard to get a key from that crackhead. When I opened the door, there you were in your finest with that witch. I should have kicked your butt, but no, I left you two to sleep off your workout. So, go ahead. Explain that, you miserable shit." I moved toward her and she spun around screaming, "Back off, Bobby." I should have heeded her warning, but, like the fool I am, continued. A second later, I was flat on my back. Sherry can really pull off one hell of a sucker punch. I was going to have a terrific black eye. I was glad she didn't break my nose. As I pushed myself up, she closed the bags and started out of the bedroom. Passing me, I grabbed her right arm and hooked it into a rear arm bar. She screamed and tried to swing around, but I torqued her wrist, causing her to stand on her toes and cry out, "Robert, let go of me." I shoved her to the bed, forcing her down, keeping the hold on while I placed my left knee on her back. She was beyond angry. I knew if I let go of her, someone was going to get hurt. As an added precaution, I relieved her of her Glock 40. "God damn it, Bobby. Let go of me." "No, Sherry, not until you hear what I have to say. If I have to keep this hold on you, by God, I will, just to make you listen." She fought to break free, but every time she tried to pull away, I would torque her wrist, causing her yell, "Okay, okay, enough already. You ready to listen?" After a long pause, she said yes. I felt her relax, but I wasn't stupid enough to let her go. "Now please, just listen, will you? I haven't a clue how I ended up in that motel room with that woman. The last thing I remember was having a few beers with Dwight and Kenny. I never even saw that woman at the club. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in bed with a strange girl next to me. Now, Here's the kicker. We didn't have sex. I didn't screw her. She didn't screw me. We didn't do anything with each other. Someone has gone to a lot of trouble to set me up, and it has to do with you. That so-called witch you found me with? Her name is Suzanne O'Connor. Guess who her father is? James O'Connor. Recognize the name? O'Connor, Doyle and Witherspoon? The poor girl had just finished her law review and was going to work for Daddy. You really think she would screw up her life by having a fling with a married man and destroy a marriage? She was as devastated as I was when we woke up together. You're the only one who knew to show up at the Pink Lady. Why? Who called you? I looked down at her and saw she was no longer struggling and said, okay, I've said my piece. If you still don't believe me and want to leave, fine. Just understand one thing. You know me. You know how much you mean to me. Do you really think I would jeopardize our relationship with a quickie in some cheap motel room? Goddamn it, Sherry. You know how much I love you. I would give my life for you. I got off her, releasing her arm. Sherry continued to lay there, her shoulders beginning to tremble. I could hear her sobbing and moved to take her into my arms. She didn't fight as I held her tight, and throwing her arms around me nearly drowned my neck in her tears. After a couple of minutes, I gently held her chin and turned her face to mine, leaned in and kissed her ever so tenderly on her soft lips. Her tears fell on my cheeks as she returned the kiss, both her hands holding my face to hers. She moaned as I ran my fingers through her lush dark hair. Eventually, we had to come up for air. When we did, she said in a scared, weak voice, "Please, Bobby, was that the truth? You never slept with her?" Truthfully, Sherry, I obviously did sleep with her because I woke up in that bed, but we never had sex. I don't believe we even kissed, but I can't say for sure. I'm trying to be as honest as my memory will allow. She smiled as I wiped away her tears. Her fingers gracefully slid along my forehead and across my cheeks before moving into my hair. Her hand went behind my neck, and once more we kissed, this time with passion. She pushed me back onto the bed. She began undoing my belt, but I stopped her and said, "Sherry, you sure? Shut up and love me. Come here, lover," she murmured and pulled me up, her arms around my neck. She kissed me, intensely kissing on my lips. "God, I love you," she cried. "Oh, what do we have here?" We had passionate sex, and once we were done, we lay there, arms encircled. "Sweet Jesus, lady, what you do to me," she lovingly replied. "Robert, you forgive me?" I looked at her and said, "For what? What do you think I would have done if I found you in bed with another man? Hell, Sherry, I'd have probably shot him." Sherry slapped me and said, "No, you wouldn't, but I don't think he would have been able to walk out of there on two good legs." "No doubt. Sherry, we need to talk. Somebody went to a great deal of effort. I can only think it was to break us up. Why? Who called you at the club?" She looked away before answering. "Dwight. He said I needed to see something. When I got there, he was gone, but Kenny, poor Kenny, he never could lie to me. Kenny said you had just stepped out for some fresh air. As I was leaving, some skank I had never seen before came up and whispered she had seen Sergeant McNamara leave with a sexy redhead. I should have asked her how she knew I was looking for you, but I didn't. Kenny's eyes were bugging out when I angrily left the bar. I figured if you picked up some 304, you would head to the closest motel. That's where I found you, in bed with that. What was her name? Suzanne? Yeah, she was upset when I woke her. I didn't know what happened or if we did anything until she told me she was sure we hadn't. You have no idea the relief I felt when she told me. At first, I thought I was going to lose you, but it just didn't smell right. I have no doubt either I or O'Connor was set up. I just don't know who yet." She looked down when she said she may have an idea. "Tell me, Sherry. Dwight, you think he's behind this?" A burning rage was building. If he was, I was going to kill him. I think so. When I stopped by his place this morning, I wanted to know what happened last night. He told me when you guys entered the Pink Lady and company, you started putting the moves on a pretty redhead. He said the two of you were dancing and mooning over each other like star-crossed lovers. Dwight acted upset over ratting you out, but he had no trouble telling me you and that redhead left the club. He further said he followed you outside and watched as you pushed her against the car, feeling her up as she returned your kisses. Then, he watched as you both got in the car and left. Dwight said he was pissed off that you would cheat on me and had to call a cab since Kenny said he was going to stay a while longer. That scumsucker. What else, Sherry? You're holding something back. She hesitated before saying, Dwight asked if I wanted to stay with him for a few days while I sorted out what I was going to do. Screw me. I hopped off the bed and smashed my fist through the wall. That little piece of dog shit. He's history. I knew he was always attracted to you, but never thought he would try something like this. Why would he even think he had a shot at you anyway? Did you say or do anything that would make him think he had a chance? God no, Bobby. I'm not that stupid. Look, Dwight may be well off, driving that fancy Maserati and living in the Bay Shore Towers, but nothing he could do would make me go for him. I only belong to you, and before I saw you with that woman, I thought you belonged to me. I did consider his offer, though. I was so angry at you. I thought that my staying with him would royally piss you off. Well, it would have. I'd probably have made hamburger out of him if that had happened. She winced and said, yeah, didn't say I was smart with that one. What do you want to do? I looked at her, an idea coming to mind. Sherry, here's what I want us to do. I want you to leave me. Leave you, why? Let me finish. Yes, I wanted you to be outraged at your cheating spouse. I want you to leave me, and did you tell Dwight you would stay at his place? She signed before acknowledging she had. All right then, I want you to move into his apartment for a few days. Act like an enraged, betrayed wife. And remember, you're a pissed off wife and cop, so you have to make like you'd shoot first, ask questions after. If you saw me, let's see what he does in that time. I'll start looking for some answers to this liaison with Miss O'Connor. She stared at me for a moment before she said she would do it. Remember, Bobby, don't lose your temper. I mean, act like you're pissed I'm staying with Dwight, but keep cool, okay? Don't worry, I know how to handle it. By the way, have you seen or heard from Kenny? No, should I have? Dwight said Kenny took off for some job down south. Kenny would have told me so he could borrow my Harley. Just doesn't sound like Kenny to take off like that. See if you can find out anything while staying it there. And Sherry? What? Don't get too comfortable up there in the towers. She laughed and slugged me. Better not take me for granted then. Grabbing the 2 suitcases, she made for the car. Here, let me help you. No, let me do it. We want to make it look real, right? I guess you're right. Call me when you have the chance. I will, honey. Kiss me before I walk out the door. She waited at the front door as I walked over to her and took her into my arms. Remember, you're my girl and my girl only. I'll remember, she said and kissed me before she walked out the door. I stood on the porch step acting pissed off as she tossed the bags into the back seat. She paused to glare at me before sliding behind the wheel. Moments later, I was watching the Crown Vic vanish down the street. Dwight, you really screwed up this time, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Time to go to work. Dwight moved Sherry's bags into the guest room, inwardly delighted at the results of his hard work. His only mistake was not making sure who the girl was before drugging her. Shit, if her old man ever found out it was Dwight who drugged Big Jim O'Connor's little girl, Dwight would be dog meat, literally. Too late now, but hell, that little redhead was just too damn cute. She didn't have a clue he had before he and Kenny left the motel room. Kenny, the little piss-ant queer, wouldn't touch her. Sherry, here's a key to the apartment. The desk clerk and doorman have already been notified you'll be staying with me. I'm really sorry about Bobby, but you're welcome to stay as long as you like. Thanks, Dwight. It'll take me a few days to find my own place. Are you sure you want to get involved? I thought you and Bobby were like brothers. Dwight winced when she said that and replied, he still is, but I also consider you just as close and I don't condone what he did. Dwight looked into her eyes, shocked at how red they were, probably from crying. Shit, he thought. She's supposed to be this tough witch homicide, but she's nothing more than a sorry, but gorgeous 304. I'll have her before she leaves. He grinned at the thoughts running through his head, his expression not lost on Sherry. Something funny about all this, Dwight? She asked. Oh no. Sorry, sure. I understand what you're going through. I only wish I could have stopped Bobby from stepping out of bounds like that. Thanks, Dwight. I'm going to rest for a while. I'll see you in the morning. Morning? Sure. I thought I would take you out to dinner or something. You know, try and make you feel a little better. No, I just want to get some rest after everything today. Thanks anyway. I'll see you later. With that, Sherry turned and walked into the guest room, closing the door. She looked at the door and thought, Dwight, you scumbag, you did set this up, didn't you? And don't call me sure. Standing outside of her door, Dwight was thinking of how he was going to enjoy having Sherry the next few days. Oh yeah, he said and walked off thinking of the next step toward her seduction. He had managed to break them up, even convinced her to stay with him despite Bobby, and now looked forward to whining and dining to her anger and revenge. Take that, Mr. Sergeant Robert L. McNamara. You got the girl, the trophies, the recognition, the awards and the medals while I was always hiding in your shadow. Now I've got the only thing important in your life, your sexy wife. And she will be, Bobby. Oh yeah, she will be screwing. Dwight chuckled as he left the apartment. Some things had to be taken care of before tomorrow. As he left the lobby, he high-fived the doorman, Clyde, a tall man and one of Dwight's steady customers. Clyde was into H. Dwight promised Clyde several fixes as long as he kept an eye on Sherry. He was careful not to tell Clyde what she did for a living. She would have scared the piss out of him and Dwight would have lost one of his best customers. Dwight waited for his Maserati, failing to notice the gray Buick parked down the street. The driver, a bearded guy in his 40s with a ponytail falling below his shoulder blades, stared at the Maserati. Lifting his shades, he spied the valet bring up the yellow sports car to his mark. Keying the pack set he held below the dash, the driver said, "Bobby, he's leaving. You want me to follow?" "Yeah, Dutch. Tag him for a few until Tank catches up to you." "Gotcha. Isn't this your buddy, Dwight?" "Not anymore." "Gotcha. Here we go. Get back to you." "Okay, later." Dutch followed the mark south along the interstate for about 5 miles before his pack set squelched. "Hey, Dutch, you there?" Keying the button, Dutch said, "Yeah, I'm here. Where you been, Tank?" "Hey, I'm here, ain't I?" Okay. The canary yellow Maserati about 5 car lengths up. See it?" "Yep, can't miss that one." "No shit." "Hey, you too. Get down to business," commanded Bobby, "and watch the language. You guys may have your own channel, but the big guys still monitor it." "Sorry about that, boss. Will do," said Tank. "No problem," answered Dutch. Tank took over the surveillance, following the Maserati south until relieved by Bobby. After 75 miles, Dwight pulled off onto Indian Truck Road, Dutch not far behind. "Hey, Sarge." "Yeah, Dutch?" He's pulling up to a small roadside motel. There's a rundown gas station next to it. "I'm gonna pull in and fill up." "Good, Tank." "Yeah, boss." "Be ready to take the eyeball. Once Dutch fills up, I want you to find a spot to hunker down. That beat-up van of yours will blend right in." "Gotcha," said Tank. Bobby asked the 2 narc investigators if they would help him on a sudden personal surveillance. Both of them, owing Bobby their lives, would do anything for him, but when they asked why knowing the target was his closest friend, Bobby would only say, "It's personal." They also heard that Sherry had walked out on him. News travels fast in the station, particularly when 2 of the department's finest split the sheets. "Bobby." "Yeah, Dutch?" "Okay, your friend went into the far room on the very end of the building. When he approached, the door opened, but I couldn't see the occupant." "Fine, Tank. I'm on it. Got a spot picked out. Just give me a call when you want to call this thing." "Won't be long." "Dutch, when he leaves, you and Tank follow him. My guess is he'll be heading back to the city. Guys, Sherry's in on the surveillance. Take it for what it's worth." "Man, glad to hear that, boss," piped Tank. "So, those rumors are bogus?" "Yeah, but he's not." Both Dutch and Tank understood Bobby's last statement. This guy Dwight was in deep shit. Kenny was sitting on the edge of the disheveled, filthy bed, staring at Dwight standing by the door. Dwight looked disgusted at the room and was careful not to touch anything. "Kenny, it's all coming together. I got Sherry staying with me and Bobby's out. Did you know that little red-haired bitch is a lawyer? Fact is, she's the daughter of Big Jim O'Connor, the top dog in trial lawyers. Thank God she doesn't know about us. Bobby said she only knows she woke up with him next to her." "Shit, Dwight, what the hell you doing? You know Bobby's gonna find out, and when he does, we're dead." Kenny was pacing the small room, his hands clasped together. His eyes were wide and darting around like a feral rat searching for a meal. "Relax, Kenny. You just gotta stay here a while longer. I can't have Bobby finding you and discovering the truth. As far as he knows, he had a drunken tryst with a good-looking redhead. So cool it. Got enough stuff to keep ya?" Kenny fervently nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Yeah, got my little bag of party favors to hold me over. But if I gotta stay here much longer, I'm gonna need another stash." What a loser, Dwight thought. Maybe I should just take care of this permanently. "Fine, just let me know. Remember, stay low. Got it?" "Shit, Dwight, I got it, okay? Fine, I'm out of here then. If anyone suspicious comes around, call me." Dwight looked around and left. Time to check on my clientele, he thought. A minute later, his Maserati was kicking up gravel as he headed back toward the interstate. He didn't bother to notice the beat-up panel truck following him. Kenny was still pacing back and forth when he heard the subdued knock. What the hell, he thought. What did Dwight forget now? When he unlocked the door, it exploded inward, slamming him against the wall. He lay stunned for several seconds before opening his eyes and looked into murderous visage of what was once a good friend, Bobby Mack. "Hello, Kenny. How's it hanging?" I know my tone sounded like death. I knelt down in front of Kenny. Hey, Bobby. What you doing here? I think you're smart enough to figure that one out, Kenny. I think it would be best if you start talking. I don't know why. Smack. Kenny's head smacked against the wall after I slapped him hard across the cheek. I said, start talking, or we're gonna be here a long time, Kenny. Okay. He gasped, rubbing his reddening cheek. This was all Dwight's doing. He set you up with that little number from the club. Why her? She was there. She came in with 2 other girls, but they latched on to a couple of guys and left her alone. Dwight put on the old charm and got her drunk and then drugged her. Kenny laughed. You know something? He wishes he had chosen another mark. Turns out the little witch is Big Jim O'Connor's daughter. Man, if the old man ever found out what Dwight did, he would be nothing more that shark bait. Get to it, Kenny. Why did Dwight want to set me up? Shit, Bobby, for Sherry. Hell, you know she's all he ever talked about. Well, at least to me. He's had a crush on for her since you 2 met that first night at the bar fight. Fact is, he was gonna go after her before you joined the force. She kept turning him down. Not because of you. She never knew you 2 even knew each other until you guys started going out. I scowled at Kenny shivering against the wall. I knew Dwight always found her attractive, but I didn't know how far that attraction went. Hell, Bobby. You know he finally got to date her once, don't you? This was a surprise to me. Sherry never mentioned they ever dated. No, I didn't know. Oh, well, nothing came of it. From what Bobby said, she was a dyke until you proved that wrong. She wouldn't put out or anything, pissed Dwight off to no end. Anyway, he couldn't stop thinking about her. After the 2 of you started going out, he got weird. You kinda shut us aside once you started the academy and then work in the streets. But when he found out you and Sherry was a thing, well, he kinda lost it. Come on, Kenny, get to it. He flinched, thinking I was going to slap him again. All right, give me a minute to clear my thoughts, shit. After a moment, he looked up and said, like I said, Dwight got really weird, saying stuff like he wasn't gonna be in your shadow no more. Then, just lately he started spewing about how he was gonna get even. He was gonna take your girl away from you. Just how the hell was he going to do that? I growled. He said he had a plan that would break you 2 up. Once she split from you, Dwight was gonna act like the loving friend and help her out. If she took his offer to stay with him a couple of nights, well, you ain't gonna like this, Bobby. Tell me, you miserable shit. I snarled. He was gonna drug her and take her that way. First, he was gonna try and get her drunk and then use those drugs he has to get a woman really hot for it. That miserable, slimy piece of garbage. Doesn't he understand Sherry would kill him afterwards? I don't think he thought that far. Bobby, he was gonna film her taking it. At first, I was supposed to do the videotaping. He even offered me a chance at her if I helped. After we dumped you, and that little number in the motel room, I got scared. I told Dwight I was out of it. I wasn't gonna do any more. Hell, man. Not only was I messing with the good friends, but also 2 cops. That was some heavy shit. Dwight had me hole up here until he finished what he set out to do. Hey, from what I understand, he's got Sherry in his apartment right now. Staring at Kenny, I couldn't believe I had been friends with those 2 pieces of garbage. I hustled Kenny into my car and radioed for a local squad car that transported my ex-buddy to the station and booked him for accessory to 2 counts of kidnapping. Before he left, Kenny wanted to tell something else. Bobby, listen, man. When I said Dwight's gone weird, I wasn't kidding. He's gone off the deep end. Bobby, you guys may have been close way back when, but now, he hates you. Be careful, man. He's one dangerously sick shit. Yeah, Kenny. I looked at the deputy and said, get him out of here. Returning to the city, I called Sherry's cell, but there was no answer. It was near 10 at night and I knew she was at his place. Now I thought my idea wasn't such a good one after all and hurried back to the city. On the way, I got hold of Tank and Dutch to check on their tail. Dutch, how's it going? I asked. Hey, Bobby. I was trying to get hold of you. Me and Tank lost him. How the hell can you lose a canary yellow Maserati? Dunno. One moment, we tailing him, and the next he just vanished. Man, he was flying back to the city. We were able to stick with him until we made the city limits. Then, he took the first off-ramp, and that's when he played the disappearing act. Tank's voice came over the pack set. Sorry, boss, but either this guy made us, or he went underground somewhere around 5th and Waterfront. Right now, I'm sitting down from the towers in case he returns to his apartment. Shit, I thought. Dwight's turned into a Looney Tune, and we lost him. God damn it. Okay, stay where you were, Tank. Dutch, hang back a couple of blocks. We may end up taking him down tonight. "'Kay, boss," answered Tank. Will do, Bobby. Keep you posted. Thanks, guys. See you when I get back to the city. Dwight did go underground, literally. He never caught on to the surveillance. He was meeting with his own dealers in a hidden warehouse near the pier. Shit, he thought, this is screwed. One day, I'm gonna be on top, not drowning in middle management. He divided the merchandise among his mules and sent them off. Moments later, he was back on the road toward the towers, Sherry on his brain. Sherry, you are gonna be my little witch tonight. Yeah, my little witch, I get you tonight. Dwight smiled at thoughts of what he was gonna do to her. He moaned and sang, prepare the treat, sweeter the meat. 20 minutes later, Dwight drove up to the glass doors of the towers. Clyde was still there. After the valet left with the Maserati, Dwight walked up to Clyde, who opened the doors. Well, never left. She should be still up there. Need any help, boss man? Nah, this one I can handle. Clyde smiled and tipped his hat. That case, I'm out of here. Later, boss man. Dwight reached out and shook the big man's hand, passing a bindle into Clyde's palm. Clyde turned, stuffing his hand into the pocket of his jacket, quickly leaving for his fix. As the desk clerk activated the elevator, Dwight gave a slight wave and said, see ya in the morning, Clyde. Dwight entered the elevator and leaned against the far wall as the doors closed. The desk clerk knew which floor to send him. He pulled out the plastic bag and removed 2 pills from their contents. The doors opened to his foyer, and he stepped into his apartment. Save for a small light, the front room was dark. He pushed a button next to the entrance, and his main room slowly glowed to life. He strolled to the other side of the room and slid back a sliding glass door to the patio. Moving to the railing, he looked over the balcony, marveling at the sparkling city lights. What a life I have, he mused. Hi, Dwight. You just get back? He turned and stared at the vision before him. Sherry was decked out in a gray pair of sweatpants, but above that, she had on a cut-up sleeveless white t-shirt. Her hair pulled back into a ponytail gave her the appearance of a sexy college student. He licked his lips, staring at her. God, she was gorgeous. That outfit did nothing to hide that mouth-watering body. Man, was he gonna enjoy this night? Yeah, business ran a little long tonight. Thought you'd be sleeping. I was but woke up couple of hours ago. Dwight, I gotta say, this is a fantastic layout. I don't want to even think how much it must be costing you. He smiled and waved his hand. I can well afford it. Would you like a drink? She nodded and said, sure, what you got? Name your poison. I'm sure I have it. With what I've just gone through, I could use a stiff one, she said. If she noticed his grin, she didn't say anything. How about a kamikaze? That should take care of you. She moved to the balcony and said, sounds good. Thanks, I'll take one. Coming up, he purred. Hell, she's making this too easy, he thought. He moved behind the bar and prepared the drinks. While he mixed hers, he dropped the powder into the glass. The drink clouded, but after stirring the mixture, cleared up. She was leaning against the balustrade, her elbows resting on the metal rim when he returned. Here you go. One special kamikaze for one special lady. Sherry took the drink and said, thank you, kind sir. He was standing to the right, just behind her as he watched her raise the glass to her lips. He smiled as she sipped the concoction. Hungry? He asked. What have you got? Shrimp cocktail? She turned, lowering the glass from her mouth. Oh, that sounds divine. Shrimp cocktail coming right up, milady. Dwight left her on the balcony as he proceeded to the kitchen. While he was gone, she poured half the contents of her drink over the balcony. She had faked the sip. She figured Dwight might try to drug her and wasn't taking any chances. While he was gone, she had searched his apartment but didn't find anything illegal or incriminating. She also hid her handgun. She thought Dwight might try and find it. Dwight returned with the shrimp cocktail, placing on the small glass table between a pair of chase lounges. When he noticed half her drink was gone, he couldn't keep from smiling. Sherry moved to the right lounge chair and laid back. She watched as Dwight sat in the other chair and grabbed a shrimp from the cup. After he popped it into his mouth, she reached over and took the shrimp closest to him. Placing into her mouth, she moaned, this is so good. Thanks, Dwight, for your generosity in letting me stay here a couple of days. It wasn't long before she had consumed 4 of the shrimp. Sherry failed to see Dwight only eat the one. No problem, Sherry. Like I said, you're more than welcome to stay as long as you like. While he made a grand gesture of his surroundings by stretching out his arms, he failed to see her dump the rest of her drink in the potted plant next to the chair. Before he turned back to her, she held the rim against her lips. That was definitely a stiff one, she giggled. I'm feeling a little loopy. She saw his ravenous smile and shuddered. Shit, she thought. He looks like a predator ready to eat his kill. Another? Exaggerating, Sherry waved her arm across the sky and said, "Of course." Before she could even finish her sentence, he was up and running back to the bar. Sherry had to smile. While Dwight was at the bar, she rose and walked into the apartment. Her drink was still a little cloudy from more of the powder while he was stirring the mixture. Dwight asked, "Where are you going?" She smiled and said, "The ladies' room, okay?" He barely said, "Course," as she strolled past the bar snatching the drink. "Do you mind?" she queried, and Dwight said, "Please." "Thank you," Sherry replied in a musical voice as she waltzed down the hallway to the bathroom. Closing the door, she looked at the drink. The liquid mix was still a little muddy from whatever Dwight slipped into it. Sherry frowned, thinking how Bobby's best friend had set this whole thing up. He was trying to break them apart so he could screw her. But the only way she was going to do that was if she was incapable of fending him off. That meant he would try to get her drunk and drug her. She wondered what Bobby was doing right about now. She rubbed her forehead. God, she thought, maybe I'm coming down with something. I am feeling a little warm. She drained about a third of the drink into the sink, rinsing the bowl afterwards so Dwight wouldn't suspect. She wanted him to think he had a chance. Returning to the main room, she found Dwight seated on the sofa, the low sound of soft jazz drifting throughout the apartment. He wouldn't take his eyes off of her. She knew she could take care of herself, but admitted to herself this guy was beginning to creep her out. But the music was heaven. She'd always enjoyed soft jazz. "Why don't you take a load off those beautiful feet and sit here?" he suggested. Sherry looked around the room and almost laughed aloud when she realized the only place she could sit on was the couch. Holding her drink, she moved to the far end, as far away from Dwight as she could get. She turned away in pretense of looking around, holding the glass to her lips. She knew Dwight was watching her. Sherry leaned over and set the glass on the floor, nearly losing her balance. "Whoa, a little tipsy there," she said and laid back. She rubbed her eyes and said, "Oh my, maybe I shouldn't have had those kamikazes on an empty stomach. I'm really beginning to feel a little strange. Hot? Dwight, please excuse me, but think I'm going to go lay down." Stumbling just a bit, she got up holding onto the arm of the couch. "May I help you?" he asked. No, I'll be fine, thank you." Sherry slowly made her way into the guest room, locking the door. The moment she shut the door, she sat on the edge of the bed. "Jesus," she said, "this guy's a pro." She checked behind the nightstand and grabbed the Glock, sliding it underneath the pillow. "Showtime," she muttered and lay back on the bed. All she had to do now was wait. While she lay there, she felt her body begin to tingle. An hour passed and Dwight was sure she, by now, would be under the effect of the drug. He didn't put much into the second drink and she only imbibed about a third, but the first glass and the shrimp cocktail should have done the trick. From experience, he knew some of his women drank very little, so he started putting the drug into the shrimp cocktail and its sauce. He would always have the untainted first bite. And Sherry ate 4 of those little suckers dripping with sauce. He stood outside her door and listened. Dwight grinned, hearing the familiar sounds of a woman in heat. He tried the knob but found it locked. Cursing, he left to get the key. Seconds later, he was quietly opening the door and peered in. His mouth fell open as he saw the woman of many sexual fantasies writhing on the bed. He glided to the bed, watching her frantic movements. Sherry had no idea he was hovering above her. He slipped off his shirt and shorts and moved onto the bed next to her. He heard Sherry gasp. Finally, he thought, my fantasy has become reality. And later, she'll be a willing participant. Dwight had already set the cameras in motion. She protested when he pulled her hand away. Oh God, she hissed. Her mind was in a constant state of uncontrollable excitement. She sensed something wrong. Suddenly, nothing was there. No, she cried as a tremendous sense of emptiness crashed against her. She looked up and saw figments of dark shadows struggling next to the bed. All but one of the shadows disappeared, the one remaining moving toward her. She reached out and grasped a hand and tried to push it against her, but it fought back. A voice forced itself into her struggle. Sherry, Sherry, Sherry? Who was Sherry? She screamed when ice-cold water struck her face. Still in the throes of unbridled lust, she slowly began to remember. Oh my God, she whimpered, staring into the dark brown eyes of her husband. Bobby, what's going on? It'll be okay, Sherry. We have an ambulance on the way. Dwight drugged you. Her chin quivered as she cried, God damn it. I was trying to be so careful. How? Don't know yet, but right now, we need to get you to a hospital. Where is Dwight? Dutch and Tank got him. He's on the way to the station as we speak. As Bobby held her in his arms, she could still feel the strong sensations of lust running through her, using every ounce of strength she had to resist trying to seduce him. Soon, she was on a gurney rushing to St. Mary's Hospital. Dwight remembers everything was going so well, just as he planned, when someone had grabbed a chunk of his hair and scalp yanking him off the bed. When Dwight was finally able to focus on the dark object above him, son of a witch, Bobby. Before he could react, a bright light exploded within his head and the sound of bone breaking thundered in his ears. "Scumsucker! You broke my nose!" he bellowed as he was tossed onto his stomach, his arms shoved behind his back. "Dwight, you're lucky that's all that I broke." Dwight felt the cold, hard steel of handcuffs on his wrists, hearing the ratchet of the teeth as Bobby closed the restraints as tight as he could get away with. "Get this piece of filth out of here." Dwight felt two pairs of hands roughly grab him and drag him out of the room. Soon, he found himself hogtied and slammed down onto the backseat floorboards of a car. He could hear two men enter the car and the engine kick on. A gruff voice spoke. "Man, you are one lucky a-hole." Bobby wanted to tear your head off. "Shit, we've been glad to give him a hand, but he's too good a cop. But, shithead, I guarantee you will have a great time in lockup." Dwight heard the two of them laugh as the car tore off, the driver speeding over every damn pothole and dip in the road. When Bobby confronted Dwight at the station the night of his arrest, Bobby learned the deep-seated hatred his close bud had for him. Dwight had a long-standing jealousy of Bobby's easy ways to succeed. Whether in high school, the university, or the Marine Corps, Dwight resented Bobby's achievements but had managed to keep his feelings buried. After Dwight discharged from the Marines, his friendship with Bobby began to crumble from a growing depression. Unknown to Bobby, Dwight jumped into selling and distribution of narcotics. Starting as a low-line mule, he was soon able to move up in the business. Seduced by the easy wealth and the hungry women, Dwight's appetite grew. After the first time he met Sherry, despite she was a cop, he tried desperately to make a play for her, but she would always turn him down. After Bobby joined the force, Dwight kept his true business from his friend, instead letting Bobby believe he was a successful broker. He was always careful nothing would ever lead the cops to him. They remained close friends until Dwight's attempts on breaking up Bobby and Sherry. "Damn it, Dwight, I loved you as a brother. How many times did I save your miserable, but in Afghanistan? What the hell happened to you? Why would you betray me and try to turn Sherry into your 304? We found all the cameras you had set up. Screw you, you goddamn Boy Scout." Dwight sneered at Bobby from across the interview table. "You never understood me, you prick," he screamed. A uniformed officer opened the interview room door, but Bobby waved him off. "Don't you get it, Bobby? You had it all, man. You had the looks, the skills, the talent, and the girls. There wasn't anything you couldn't do. It all came so easy for you. I was your best friend, but everyone could only see you, not me. Even you didn't see me. When Sherry came along, I fell in love. But, oh no, you had to have her. And then you married her. I would have gone legit for her. But no, you never let me have a chance. Shit, it was so easy to fool you. Jesus, I was making a killing on the narcotics trade and a few other enterprises. Yeah, I had to work for some fools along the way, but took care of them. Without your help. Thought I was some major stockbroker, didn't ya?" Dwight laughed, staring at his old friend. Bobby stared at his closest friend, never realizing the depth of Dwight's hatred. He shook his head, stood and moved to the door. Before he left, he turned and said, "Dwight, I'm sorry you felt that way. Maybe I should have recognized your feelings long ago, but all you had to do was tell me. I would have been there for you." After Bobby left the room, Dwight gazed at the door, a single tear rolling over his cheek. Dwight W. Matherson was found guilty on 2 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of sexual assault with special circumstances. He was also convicted of narcotics trafficking and sales. Serving 25 years at the state pen, Dwight never had a chance for parole. 2 years after his conviction, one of the prison guards was conducting a routine check of the kitchen and detected a strange sweet odor. Tracking the smell to a large industrial oven, he looked inside, screamed, and heaved his guts. Inside, on a large steel tray, was charred corpse bound and gagged. The body would later be identified as Dwight Matherson. He had been cooked alive. Kenneth J. Bonka, aka Kenny, was charged with 1 count of kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnapping. He turned over on Dwight and cooperated with the DA's office. Given 5 years, eligible for parole in 3, he too never made it out of prison. A week before his parole hearing, Kenny was found in his cell, his testicles sliced off and his tool jammed down his throat. Though investigations proved fruitless, Bobby had no doubt who was behind the killing. Big Jim always believed paybacks are a son of a witch. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.